Hey, welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. I'm going to do a little bit of politics here, and this is one of those things where it's a good thing that my channel has very little reach because I'm about to say something that could save the Democrats, and I really don't want them saved because I think they're disgusting and horrible at this point. And not individual Democrats, but the party, okay? The party is this weird mashup of violent Marxists who actually want to destroy the country and power-hungry establishment Democrats who don't care how much you destroy the country as long as they get more power. Pelosi, 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 that kind of thing. But they're about to screw up their election. They're about to screw up the election intentionally, unintentionally, but through very intentive actions because their worldview is skewed and because they're not willing to think things through. Now, I have some friends who make very weird logical constructs when they come up with ideas and theories. Some very smart people, but smart doesn't mean not prejudiced. I had a friend. He's very smart. He's active in the computer science world, and he's active in the election world, and he's incredibly intelligent, but he's not very wise. And he's willing to let his emotions color things to the point where he can't see. He's also very enamored of logical constructs. He's very enamored of building fairy castles out of spun sugar because they're pretty, not because they're real. And he's one of those people who I think is going to get this one very wrong, but for different reasons than the Democrats are. Let me tell you about the Democrats right now. The Democrats are pushing for mail-in voting. What they want is mandatory mail-in voting. They want the polls to be closed. That's the only part that is, for them, intelligent about their goal. They can't do it. You can't close the polls. That's not possible. There's no way that the pandemic is going to be bad enough that you can get away with physically closing the polls. Even here, okay, this is Nevada, and we've recently passed a bill that limits rural polling places. So in the Democratic cities, they have an functionally unlimited number of polling places and ever-increasing numbers of them. But they're limiting and drawing down the size and locations of the rural, primarily Republican polling places. And this is intentional. It's in the bill. It's being fought legally, but it's there. The fact is, it's there. A couple things the Democrats forgot about that is that our polling places are open for a week before Election Day. Pretty much, this is how it works in the country. You know, Democrats start to believe their own propaganda and then forget about realities. You know, you can go vote for a couple of weeks in most of the country. There's early voting, the polls are open for a week, there's always early absentee voting, stuff like that. This isn't something where you have to stand in line until 10 p.m. on Election Day. Yes, there's a bunch of people who are too idiotic to figure out how to do their voting until the last minute, when the outrage media says, "Oh my God," and then it's all voter suppression. Whatever. The Democrats believe their own propaganda, and they don't understand that shutting down the polling places in rural Nevada isn't going to work for them. It's going to piss people off. It's going to make more people show up to be volunteers at the polling places. It's going to make more people show up to vote in overwhelmingly Republican areas. It's going to make more people remind each other that they can vote on Saturday, that they don't have to wait till Tuesday. This is not a good strategy for them, okay? When you take people who have self-agency, and you actually try to restrict their freedoms, they tend to rebel. In America, they tend to rebel. Democrats are too used to multi-generational poverty voters who aren't suppressed, but that's the idea of suppression. They believe their own propaganda, and it's going to bite them in the butt. Okay, so polls aren't going to be closed, and that's going to kill the Democrats. because at this point we have what amounts to an activist movement of people who think that they are protesting, sticking it to the socialists, the Marxists, the authoritarians, whatever. This isn't even necessarily left and right. It's just people who are authoritarian. They're sticking it to the authoritarians by going to vote. Now, the other side to this here is that the Democrats have a belief. It's a very firm belief. It's progressives especially, but run-of-the-mill Democrats, that if they can just get everyone to vote, they will always win because there's more of them. And there's limited truth to that, because getting everyone to vote also means getting the disaffected voters to vote. And when you start trying to force them to vote, they're not going to vote for you. That's not how it's going to work. Okay, so mail-in voting is an attempt to not quite force, but get ballots into everybody's hands. Okay? Whether they're ready to vote, whether they're able to vote, whether they're skilled enough to fill out a form that only has checkboxes and a signature, whether they have enough fucking self-motivation to get that ballot to a mailbox, okay? And they don't even have to get it there by election day. It can be postmarked 3 days later at this point in Nevada, and that's fine. But you're going to have a lot of people who they're not going to show up. They're not going to send it in for a week. There's going to be a last-minute rush of, oh no, the election's not going our way. It's been 5 days. Let me find my ballot. People are going to throw it away. People are going to ignore it. People are going to get high or drunk and ignore it. This isn't a good plan for them. The goal of the Democrats, and this is an absolute open goal, is to get all the ballots mailed out so that they can win. They're not doing it so that everyone can vote. They're doing it so they can win. That's the goal. Because there's a firm belief that if they can just get enough people to vote, they will always win and they can't lose. Can't lose. Remember that. 2016. Can't lose. All right. So what happens when you get all those mail-in ballots sent out? Well, nothing. You have no one on the ground. You have no one pushing for the polling places. Yeah, you have some internet PSAs and some advertisements on television saying, hey, don't forget to fill out your ballot. Hey, make sure you mail in your ballot. Hey, make sure you sign your ballot. That's not the same. That's not the same thing as going around and saying, hey, you want to come vote? I'll give you a ride. You know, it's not the same thing as getting people to the polls. That kind of movement is very different and very likely to produce different results. Excuse me for one moment. Allergies. So think about that. I think the Democrats are shooting themselves in the foot, and it's because they buy their own propaganda and they don't know what they're doing. I really think they have bought into a set of assumptions and a set of performance assumptions that just don't match reality. You know? That's all I got. Stay sideways.